Japanese, and the mountain troops seemed like a good way to go about it.
When the idea of the mountain troops came up, I was head of the ski patrol at Sun Valley, Idaho. I ended up in I Company, 87th. My brother ended up in K Company, which was right next door. We were pretty knowledgeable of snow and cold weather, having been born and brought up on a farm in northern New Hampshire. So to us, cold weather and snow was second nature. I mean, we expected it every winter, cold than hell.
A friend of mine said, if you have the chance, be sure and join this outfit. He says, it's one big country club out here. All it lacks is the hot-butted rungs. So, of course, I was very enthusiastic.
I was working in the Grand Teton National Park and learned through the American Alpine Club that this unit was being created, and I couldn't get into it fast enough. The enlistments came primarily out of the Ivy League universities of New England and out of the Midwest, particularly Minnesota, the Norwegians in particular. The recruiting took place among men who were skiers and mountaineers, all volunteers joining the unit because they wanted to be in it. They wanted to be with other mountain men, other skiers, and so forth. The result was we had perhaps the finest morale unit in the entire Army. We were there because we wanted to be there.
My Uncle Jimmy was a captain in the 10th Mountain Infantry, and he was already a commissioned officer from Northwestern Military Academy. And so when the war broke out, he naturally volunteered. He had a very successful business going, he had a wife. He really didn't have to go, but it was everybody's duty at that time to do your part. And he being a skier and having the love for mountains, he was naturally drawn to become a 10th Mountain Soldier.
My father, Ben Duke, he went to high school in Chicago, then went on to college, Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And Williams has a ski racing team, I think he was involved in the ski club there. And when the war broke out, the 10th Mountain Division basically recruited guys in those New England schools.
My dad, Pete Seibert, was in the 10th Mountain Division. You know, my dad was incredibly gregarious. He was the center of things, and whenever he walked in a room, you hear that about a lot of big characters in life, and he was certainly one of them.
You know, these guys came together for a common purpose to win the war, but they also had the camaraderie and, you know, the same love of skiing and mountains.
I think a lot of these guys actually wanted to go to camp and just hang out with their buddies in the mountains. They really wanted to be here.
By the spring of 1942, high in the Colorado Rockies, construction was underway on Camp Hale. Here, the true story of the 10th soldiers would begin to unfold. How they lived, how they trained, and how one day they would have an impact on the world.
The reason that Camp Hale was selected at 9,200 feet and Tennessee Pass here at 10,000 was you had 6 months winters. And so it became a most important part of our existence, really, as we trained for what we were going to face later on.
I got on the train in Pueblo and went up through the canyon, and then I saw white-capped mountains in the background. I knew that I was headed for snow country.
These 10th Mountain recruits might have been headed for snow country, but they weren't necessarily equipped for the conditions they would encounter.
Hey, gearing up with my Army issued 1942 fatigues.
To get a sense of what it was like for the men of the 10th Mountain Division, professional skier and longtime 10th enthusiast Chris Anthony decided to visit Camp Hale and take a step back in time.
I'm guilty of this, and I know everybody's guilty of this. They look at an old picture, or they look at old video, they look at old Warren Miller stuff, and they go, oh, those guys look so geeky and they can't ski that well. Well, I tell you what, take a step back in time and actually go out and put on that equipment, step into the shoes of what those men were utilizing back then, and it'll put everything in perspective. This just goes to show how tough these guys were. I'm wearing modern stuff underneath.
And Chris wasn't alone. He invited two of his buddies, Tony Seibert and Scott Kennett, both world-class skiers and descendants of 10th Mountain soldiers.
Some new boots, some super sick goggles.
You know, just taking everything out and seeing what they used to wear and everything was really cool.
The first time I put all the 10th Mountain gear on, we were actually in Camp Hale, and we were on the old roads that those guys drove into Camp Hale and marched on and did all that. And we put the ski camouflage on, the boots, the gloves, the goggles, the hats, everything.
Oh yeah. It was amazing that they even used this stuff.
And it literally, you know, looking around where I was with that gear on, knowing my uncle was here back in, you know, the 1940s doing the exact same thing, it brought goosebumps to me.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, when my grandpa was there in the same gear, the same skis, in the same area, and it was actually like being back in time, and you got a really good feeling for what it's like to be a 10th Mountain Trooper.
Now comes the hardest and most important part, downhill. All right, men, watch your skis.
Where we are is what was called Cooper Hill, and it was built so that the units of the division could be brought up here, 400 at a time, and given ski training on this hill. There were barracks just below, and it was a 2-week type of special training time. Then back to Camp Hale, and 400 more would come up. And over a period of the first winter, which was the winter of 1942-43, there were about 8,000 men brought up here for ski training. The United States Army had never had mountain and winter warfare trained troops prior to the creation of the 10th Mountain Division. So we were brand new. We were a new experiment. So absolutely everything had to be new, tested, developed.
I helped unload a truck full of those long white sticks, and some guys even called them skis.
They were state-of-the-art skis at that time, and there were two lengths, 7'2", 7'6", if I remember correctly.
This is one method of determining the correct length of the ski. By placing the tip at the palm of a man's hand with his arm extended over his head. For example, you're about 6 foot tall, average weight. You'll take a 7'2" ski.
The binding had to be one binding, a binding that would be good for downhill, and a binding that you could do cross-country on.
This gives the foot ample freedom to work the ski and lengthen a stride.
The cable around the notch in the boot, and then lugs on the side where you could change to the binding cable, and that would permit the heel to come up for cross-country, or it'd be locked down for downhill.
Well, that's enough for now. Better turn in and get a good night's rest. Tomorrow morning, the ski instructor will start your actual ski lessons. And good luck to you.
All of the rest of the equipment that we had was literally developed for us during the time we were at Camp Hale. And everything that was developed weighed 118 pounds. I weighed 118 pounds. They said if I put a pack on, I couldn't get off the floor.
The basic movements of skiing were taught, period. That was it. And how to handle the extra weight of a pack and a rifle. Particularly that rifle swinging around on your back. And it was practice. And
the whole skiing technique learned was to have a body erect right over the skis and not letting the shoulder go down on either side. But getting used to doing that, you had to have that weight on your back. I was at that time a lieutenant, pulled an inspection of a unit one time and found the rucksacks were all filled with pillows. The soldier learns fast.
It was very hard work. You didn't have groomed slopes. You had crusted or deep powder. You were skiing in the trees. You were carrying 90 pounds of rucksack. You were carrying what you needed to survive in the winter in these forests and these mountains.
Well, yeah, you only able to get down. Get down, no matter how to get down, it's fine.
Okay, sure.